Hi, everyone. I've had a great time talking to a bunch of you this week about the arguments that you're putting together in the form of either a podcast or a magazine feature article. I'm having the same conversation with people multiple times, and that's okay because it's a conversation that tells me you are paying attention to the instructions that I'm giving you. And it's a conversation about the hardest thing about this project. And that's the question that Ainsley Prinz asked me last night, and that many of the rest of you have asked me in a range of ways. Am I taking a stance? And so I want to step back and do some work to talk with you about the kind of stance that you're taking, and then about how that works out, like Brandon and I talked about, in the language of storytelling and the kind of story that you're going to tell in your podcast or your feature article. I have 20 slides here, and I'm going to talk through them. I'm hoping that this only takes one, maybe two videos, but we'll see. I've got about 15 minutes per video, and so I'm hoping that we can get through this pretty quickly, especially because a lot of it will be review. So I want to start by going back to where we've gone in a couple other videos. First, there are three kinds of claims. We have a policy claim. And the stance that you take when you're making a policy claim says we should or should not do X thing. We have value or evaluation claims. And when we make an evaluation claim or a value claim, we're saying I judge X thing to be good or bad, better or best, more or less valuable than something else. Finally, we have fact claims. And a lot of academic writing makes fact claims, where we say, I would like you to believe, based on my evidence, that X thing is true. Now, it's important to recognize that these kinds of claims build on each other, that fact claims are the heart of all value claims and all policy claims. We cannot make a policy claim without first making a fact claim or a value claim. We cannot make a value claim without first making a fact claim. So, for example, we saw the superintendent make a policy claim earlier this week. He announced that we would be working to bring you guys all back to campus in the fall. That policy claim was grounded in a fact claim. Colorado Springs is at low risk for outbreaks of COVID-19. We judge that Colorado Springs is safe for and safe from returning cadets. Therefore, we can claim that we should bring cadets back to the academy for the fall 2020 term. Notice how he ultimately is making this claim, but this claim rests on a base of facts and the way that we evaluate or value those claims. Here's another example. I've talked with a few of you about the example of wearing uniforms while distance learning. The dean has said that you have to wear uniforms while distance learning. And the argument goes something like this. Fact claim. USAFA is a military academy. Value claim. It is good for cadets to remember that they are a part of the military. Fact claim. Wearing uniforms while engaging in distance education will help cadets remember that they are cadets. Because of this foundation of fact and value claims, the dean determined that cadets should wear uniforms when engaging in distance education. So the dean's policy claim about wearing uniforms was based on a fairly solid and quite interesting, in fact, I think quite legitimate set of fact and value claims. Now, I don't mind telling you, I wish that the dean hadn't required you to wear your uniforms. And my argument would go something like this. Military communities are not based on wearing uniforms. They're based on connections between people. It's good to facilitate as many connections as possible between faculty and cadets when cadets are distance learning. I believe It is a fact that the expectation that cadets will wear uniforms while learning makes it less likely that they'll connect with faculty via EI. Therefore, I would argue, cadets should not wear uniforms when engaging in distance education. The dean and I have different views on this. We disagree, but both of us come to our perspectives using fact and value claims. It's just that we have different patterns of fact and value in our argument. Okay, so what? Well, here's the deal. Until you're a lieutenant colonel, a colonel, or a general, your primary task is going to be advising your leaders. So they're going to make the ultimate policy decision, but they may want to know what fact and value patterns lead you to your recommendations for what your team should do. So your leader is going to make the ultimate policy claim, but you're going to help them by establishing the fact patterns and the value patterns that you want them thinking about as they make that claim. It's important to recognize that in many situations, our understanding of fact and value patterns sits below our conscious understanding. So the goal of this project is to bring those subconscious understandings to the surface. Think about it this way. When your best friend is dating someone that you don't like, and that person does something that you don't like, you may make a policy recommendation. Boom, break up with that person. Now, you in your mind have a set of facts that you're seeing. This person does X, Y, and Z thing, fact. Those things are harmful to you, best friend, value, break up with them, policy. But we do that in our brains so fast that we rarely articulate those patterns. This project is an opportunity for you to articulate those fact and value patterns that you see in play in an argument. So the topic that you've selected is a policy claim, okay? You are going to be making an argument that is a fact claim, and you're going to be making that argument about the values that we see when we are discussing the facts of the claim. Okay? So your topic is a policy claim. You're making in this project some kind of fact claim. And that fact claim is going to be about the values. How are people evaluating things? Now, some of you are going, okay, great, Dr. Pugh's being a theory head right now. And yes, I am. So jump to minute 8:16 if this is not helpful. What does this actually look like? So here are a couple of actual examples from your peers. I talked with Jace Waters earlier today, and he's asking, what do the use of pathos, ethos, and logos appeals in the conversation about the NFL's response to concussion tell us about the values of all stakeholders in American football? So notice he's paying attention to those appeals, and he's asking, what are the values of stakeholders? He's going to end up with a fact claim. And as we worked today, what we heard was that these responses are showing a balance between a desire to keep the NFL's reputation for toughness. I think Jace used the word gladiators at some point, and a desire for safety. Because without that safety, ultimately the NFL might not exist. So you can see how this question points us to a fact claim about what it is that those stakeholders value. John Hilbert in my second period class is thinking about the circular economy that some of you read about in the National Geographic article. His question is, what does the rhetoric of economic sustainability in the debate about the circular economy tell us about the values of corporations? Now here you can see that John is not using the pathos, ethos, and logos appeals, but he is thinking about this pattern of language that he hears coming up over and over again. Economic sustainability, right? A possible stance might be corporations must balance their desire to present themselves as green with the financial impact that that choice affords them, with the high cost of converting to more sustainable environmental processes. So here we hear the values. Corporations value their financial stability, but they also might actually value being environmentally sustainable. So these are the things that they have to balance. Here's a third example. And this comes from Joe Wilson in fourth period. What does the rhetoric of moral hazard in the debate about closing the mountains to backcountry skiing tell us about the values of Colorado's mountain towns? Now, Joe had to do some secondary research to learn what moral hazard is, but moral hazard is the idea that the choices that I make have a moral effect that could be negative. If I choose to buy fast fashion from China that Instagram sells to me, then I might be participating in a system that is morally and ethically suspect. That's moral hazard. If people want to go backcountry skiing, they might be promoting or they might be spreading COVID. But at the same time, those mountain towns really need the revenue. So one possible stance that Joe could take is to say that communities that rely on tourism will be more susceptible to the impact of global economic and health crises than communities that do not rely on tourism. Okay, I have 12 minutes. I have 12 minutes on the clock and a bunch more slides. So I am going to stop here and create the next video. The next video is going to take us into the world of what that rhetoric looks like and how this becomes a story.